I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to this edition of I Mix What I Like right here, BPM. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. I just happened to come across a video where the algorithm pointed me towards a video that came out about a year ago titled, "What Do U.S. Navy Sailors Do in Their Off Time?" I thought we would check it out, a little patrons first special, a look at how maybe a look at, we could call it a quick look at soft propaganda, soft national security cinema. In any event, I thought we'd have a little fun, look at this video real quick and just see how it comports with what I remember. It's a more or less recently put together video, so it'll be interesting to see to what extent I can identify some updates from when I was in the Navy, from 1989 to 1993. Big shout out to you patrons. Thank you very much for your support. To those of you who will see this when it goes public, thanks for your support of our channel. Please consider being a patron, where you'll get early access to videos like this and a whole bunch more. So let's check it out.
As we all know, defending a country is not an easy task. Doing so requires great power, and with great power
That's the
comes
flight
great
deck.
responsibility. As soon as a naval warship is deployed from its port, its crew members on board must work constantly and ceaselessly to ensure the ship is operational and ready to provide naval support at all times. On warships like destroyers, naval sailors are required to be active for most hours of the day. At some point, however, these sailors are relieved of their daily chores and given the chance to take a breather.
Look at that beer,
What do
high
these
quality
sailors do
beer.
during their invaluable spare time? Let's find out how they let off some steam.
Okay, so first I'm noticing off the top that, okay, I'm clear. Let me recalibrate. So they're talking about what sailors do during their off time while at sea. So they're not getting into what goes on in port, which might become a whole different kind of video and something the military can't use for recruitment purposes or propaganda purposes. So that's interesting. So we'll start there. They're talking about while everybody's out at sea. And we've already seen some interesting shots of the flight deck on an aircraft carrier, where I did get to spend a little bit of time, particularly in the catwalks, that is on the elevated platforms on the side of the flight deck. But so, okay, we're clear on that. And you saw some of the cheap beer. I've talked a little bit about this before in my E3 and below videos, but we'll come back to that. Let's see what they say.
It's a well-known fact that being a U.S. Navy sailor is not an easy occupation. It requires being isolated at sea for long periods and away from their loved ones. As part of their initial training, these sailors are made to understand the hazards that come with being a Navy sailor. While they're at sea, they can be exposed to bad weather, drowning, shipwrecks, and many other dangers aboard the ship.
That's
This
all
part
true.
of their training helps them prepare and avoid such occupational hazards. Living on a warship is not as comfortable as you probably think. The living quarters aboard a vessel are usually
Look at
small.
that.
and
Look
leave
at that. Look at that. So I don't know what this is. This like a compartment they have? That might be new. Some of this looks newer. If I back it up just a little bit, you see this is what it looked like. This is more look like what when I was in. And three stacked up, 3 levels high with the lock. This part elevates. You can lift this up and you have a little shelf space under here. And these curtains close, so you have what would be considered relative privacy, and then very close quarters with these lockers here. So this is, if I advance it just a little bit, it looks like this looks like an update of that, but it's still. And if you're over 6 feet, you can't really stretch out entirely over here unless they've made adjustments, and you definitely obviously can't sit up very much. So yeah, it's that's what it is.
For crew members, generally, a sailor works for 4 hours and rests for 8 hours every day. In other cases, a sailor can work for more hours than usual, depending on their department and responsibilities.
I don't know what they're talking about. I never had a 4-hour day. Not out at sea, especially. Maybe in port. but not out at sea. A 4-hour day, please.
An average sailor works for more than 40 hours every week at sea. To ensure a sailor
Way
doesn't
more than
become
that.
super exhausted while on duty, the U.S. Navy employs a rotation system whereby sailors can move from one department to another on deployment. This helps sailors to always be battle ready at all times on a warship.
And just in case, if you're interested, I don't know if I've always thought it was interesting, the different colored jerseys on the flight deck. Yellow, this guy in yellow with the tan pants, he's more likely an officer in charge of determining the launch. If you saw back here a frame a little bit, yeah, the shooter, he's usually an officer, a flight officer who would be in charge of the final decision to launch. These guys in green are I forgot what they're called, but they're the what are they called? They guide the planes. They're in charge of moving the planes and putting the planes on the catapult and moving them to wherever they're supposed to be. The ones in red are ordnance. Purple is fuel. I forgot what they call the green ones, but they're the ones that move the planes around. And the ones in white are the flight check. They're usually assigned. They're enlisted crew who are assigned to the specific aircraft. And sometimes they even have their name under the pilots, and they do all the last checks in terms of everything's working properly. You see them giving a thumbs up here, and then the flight director, this guy says go, and then they go.
For most of these sailors, their off time is not really an off time. They can use this opportunity to catch up on overdue tasks which they couldn't do during their work hours. Their off time is also a great period to perform basic chores, such as laundry and cleaning their beds. On some days, there could be a military task going on, like an at-sea replenishment. On such days, when it comes down to how many hours a sailor gets in his free time,
and that's the ship store right
around
there. That looked about the same. You actually have a ship store where it's almost like a little 7-Eleven or something on the aircraft carrier, where you can go and buy your toiletries and whatnot. And this looks modern with the soda machines and stuff. But like you have a little, you can go buy your little groceries and stuff like that, razors and batteries and whatnot. Yeah.
In his free time, what should have been around 8 hours of rest becomes 3 hours at most.
Yeah, that's about right.
Sailors do not abide by the standard 40 hours a week that most government officials are subjected to. For U.S. Navy sailors, their work week is divided into 3 sections. Unlike Sundays being the start of their work week, Thursday, which is usually the day their ship is deployed, is their day 1.
I never knew
that,
actually.
And their work cycle repeats itself until the day they return to port. That means crew members do not have weekends off, including Sundays. Perhaps this is why some sailors...
Oh, look, you got a clip. Look at a quick glimpse of my underway replenishment where I got Top Gun. Hold on a second. But it's true. It's not like a regular work. Look at that guy right there. It's a quick shot. This guy right here. That used to be that was one of my jobs. And when what you're doing is we would be on the carrier and this other ship is parallel and you're moving at like 30, 40 miles an hour. Underway replenishment. And then you shoot this projectile onto the ship. And then they use that to start the connection that begins the transfer of the main cables and the whatever other pulleys and whatever. And then you can start moving all kinds of mail, weaponry, cargo, all kinds of, food and all kinds of other stuff to replenish the ship. And that was, yeah, right on. Glad they included that in there.
Why some sailors lose track of time, because a new day is almost the same as the previous.
And you see the 2 ships connected there.
Over the years, the U.S. Navy has made several efforts to ensure its sailors can be somewhat comfortable while risking their lives at sea. This is why some aircraft carriers have Starbucks outlets.
Oh, wow.
Really, in a work environment where alcohol is prohibited, what's the next best option other than a cup of hot steaming coffee to wash your tensions away?
That's definitely
a popular way U.S. Navy sailors let off steam during their time at sea is through steel beach picnics. Pictures and videos from this event have sparked envy even in the hearts of sailors and civilians on land.
All right, but the one part, okay, I don't think hold on a second.
During a steel beach picnic, the 5,000 sailors living and working aboard an aircraft carrier come out to the ship's deck to have a good time. Steel beach picnics haven't always been a means for sailors to have fun, though. The
But look,
naval
you can
tradition
see
was
it.
conceived.
You can see. Look, you can see. This is. I was wondering if that. So first of all, you would get a steel beach picnic if you had been out to sea for 45 days consecutively, and if you were not going to hit port within another 45 days consecutively. So they weren't common, at least when I was there. So we only had a couple of these. And that's when they break it and they give you 2 beers. And then again, we would make deals. Some of us would make deals to get other people's beers. And you know, if you haven't had a beer in several weeks and months, you get 6, 7, 8 beers and you'd be lit. But what I notice out here just quickly in the clips is what I experienced, the racial separation. I can't help but notice it. And if you just look at you could just see, like right there,
been a means for...
like this group of men is all black. Now, I know that they don't intend to show it this way, but this was my experience, that there was very little social integration on the aircraft carrier. So I'm not surprised to see this even in what is clearly meant to be a promotional video.
These picnics not only help to boost the crew's morale, but also supply the sailors with some much-needed vitamin D. Some sailors are not allowed on the deck for months, so coming out to the Steel Beach picnic is the only time they can be under the sun.
Now, that is true. I spent during Desert Storm close to 3 months working in the kitchens, in the deep sink, and I did not see the sun for almost that entire time. I worked nights, below decks, and not only did not get to spend time on the flight deck like this, but never got to see you just be outside or in the sun. So it was terribly debilitating. But and again, this was rare. For this level of sort of enjoyment on the flight deck, I only saw maybe once or twice in my 4-year time, and a lot of time at sea on an aircraft carrier. And the only time we were on the flight deck like this was for the FOD walk down, or the foreign object damage walk down, to make sure there was nothing that would get sucked into a jet engine, or the occasional Steel Beach picnic. But this is interesting.
The deck, which is usually 4 to 5 acres of land, becomes small when everyone aboard the ship comes out to play and mingle. Various games such as card games, checkers, football, basketball,
yeah, I was wondering if they were going to say
jump
anything
ropes
about that.
are just a few of the activities enjoyed by the sailors on deck.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of gambling. They're not mentioning that. A lot of cards, of course, spades, poker, and a lot of gambling. There was dice, a lot of dominoes. I didn't see any reference to that yet. So there was and of course, I'm sure they're not going to mention all of the illicit drug trafficking that was going on as well, but use, obviously.
Settle for reading a book or sunbathing. And what's a picnic without food and drink? The head kitchen staff member decides which food is to be prepared on the deck. There are also coolers of ice-cold beer made available for those sailors to properly cool off. That is how Steel Beach picnics go on aircraft carriers.
Okay, just a quick look at a recent, more or less recent piece of Navy propaganda. It is clearly presenting a new style that I'm not familiar with. So look, nothing deep here. We know what it is. It's more propaganda, preparing people for a version of a permanent state of warfare and military experience. It's probably not going to be very real once you get in. And it's certainly not explaining the actual purpose or function of the people there and the missions that they're going to be involved in supporting. So, but all that said, I thought it was cool to just sort of reminisce and see what they're saying is happening today. Another just small and humble thanks to our patrons. And to the rest of you, thank you as well. Consider becoming a Patreon supporter. If not, still, peace to you, only if you're willing to fight for it. Like Fred Hampton used to say. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like and throughout the BPM platform. Thanks again, everybody. Peace.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.